In the immediate aftermath of September 11, 2001, the United States under the Bush administration would embark on a war on terror. We would go after Al Qaeda, who was responsible for the attacks on 9/11, and we would go after those who harbor Al Qaeda and support Al Qaeda. And our initial efforts began in Afghanistan, Operation Enduring Freedom, to where the Taliban in Afghanistan had harbored Al Qaeda and was hiding them in the mountains all throughout the Afghanistan, all throughout the mountainside and region in Afghanistan, especially in the mountains near Pakistan. The United States that fall in 2001 would send troops to Afghanistan to find Al Qaeda, smoke them out of their caves, and then control the Taliban, who had led a brutal regime unto the Afghani people, who openly resisted them. That began our search for Osama bin Laden himself, who was believed to have been hiding in the caves in the mountains of Afghanistan near the Pakistani border. And more Americans would be sent to Afghanistan to smoke Al Qaeda out, but then also to engage the Taliban and remove their rule and establish a more firm Afghani government control to be a beacon of not just democracy, but to also help maybe perhaps women obtain more educations. Um, the Taliban brutally reprised any attempts for women to have educations in Afghanistan. So we wanted to do something within that there. All while that was going on there, as I've mentioned in prior videos, it was believed that Iraq had been not just harboring Al Qaeda, but also obtaining weapons of mass destruction that would potentially be used to cause undue harm unto Americans should Iraq have an opportunity. And there were various different intelligence reports that suggested that they had these. And of course, we knew that they had gassed their own people. We knew that Saddam Hussein was a really bad dude, and we knew that he had killed untold amounts of his own people. The United States, because it was believed that he was harboring Al Qaeda and had these threats, sent a contingent of American troops to set up stage in Kuwait should this threat continue. And in January of 2003, the United States continued to build a presence there, eventually leading to March, where various other reports were finalized and confirmed that the Iraqis were hiding weapons of mass destruction and planning various different other things undue to the United States. And the U.S. gave Saddam Hussein a short matter of time to turn themselves in or otherwise leave Iraq. And upon not doing so, we invaded Iraq and eventually made our way to Baghdad, where we toppled the capital and Saddam Hussein's palaces. So, okay, now what? Now there's going to be a power vacuum. If there was any one good thing about Saddam Hussein's brutal regime, was that there was an unquestionable sense of who was in power, who's in charge. Well, Saddam and his Ba'athist regime was unquestionably the leaders. Okay, now what? Now, without your brutal leader, there's going to be a power vacuum and a power struggle. You're going to have Al Qaeda, who was believed to have been there, but I don't really believe that would have been the case. They would have threatened Saddam Hussein's power. He would not have allowed that. But if they weren't there beforehand, they're going to be there now. And then you're going to have Iran funneling money to Shiite militants to engage American troops in various different parts of Iraq. You're going to have other militants who are going to come from elsewhere in the Middle East who hate America and would love to kill American troops. You're going to have Iraq potentially there. And then you're going to have Iraqis themselves who may not be anti-American, but they may have a power struggle within themselves as far as to who's going to have the most control and most say in Iraq itself. So you have this ugly situation. The United States is going to have to stick around for a while to ensure that the Iraqis are going to be able to set up a government and be able to establish for themselves some sort of firm control and an opportunity for themselves, all while recognizing that there are Kurds in the mountainous regions of northern Iraq. You're going to have various different cities who are going to be terrorist strongholds. You're going to have to root out terrorists from city to city. And in the meantime, you're going to have cities like Ramadi and Fallujah and Tikrit who are going to further and further build Al-Qaeda presence, and there's going to be more of an insurgency. All the while, there's going to be a Shiite insurgency who is against Al-Qaeda, but they also hate America. Okay, you're going to create a problem here. Just because you remove Saddam Hussein doesn't mean that you ended the conflict. You actually just kind of worsened it. All the while, no weapons were found. During our stint in Iraq, which would last for the better part of 11 years, almost 5,000 Americans lost their lives as part of our involvement there. Okay. Now, that may be 5,000 too many, but one thing is also clear. 5,000 is a drop in the bucket compared to what we lost in World War II, and it's a lot less than what we lost in Vietnam, but it was still 5,000 too many. So you can make a case that we should or should not have gone to Iraq. Did we do the noble thing? Were we just trying to protect our oil interests? Do they still have weapons of mass destruction hidden somewhere? We just never found them. Were they really a threat? Were they not a threat? That's going to be continued into perpetuity. Fact of the matter is, we went into Iraq, we removed Saddam Hussein, and after about 6 months or so, we eventually captured him and imprisoned him, and the Iraqi government actually put him to death in December of 2006. Okay? If you're Iran, you're a little bit nervous because to your east, the United States has a large military presence fighting the Taliban in Afghanistan. To the west, the United States sent a very large troop population to invade Iraq. To the west, Americans are there. To the east, Americans are also there. So if you're Afghanistan, you're a little bit nervous about this. Or if you're Iran, you're a little bit nervous about this whole thing. Okay? Otherwise, did we do the right thing by invading Iraq? I don't know. Some people make an argument and say that, it was just George W. Bush continuing what his father didn't do at the end of the Persian Gulf War, actually going into Iraq and ousting Saddam Hussein, which we should have done 12 years beforehand. I don't know if that's true or not, but otherwise, we went into Iraq. Some good folks that I know have served in Iraq and in Afghanistan, mind you. Some of them never came back. So, the United States learned a little bit of a lesson in that stability, for right or wrong and the ugliness of it all, may not be such a bad thing. Because what happened to Iraq after Saddam Hussein left is arguably a lot worse. Okay. Elsewhere in the Middle East, eventually Navy SEALs from SEAL Team 6 was able to infiltrate into Pakistan, where intelligence had discovered that Osama bin Laden was hiding. They were able to secretly go into his compound, and they were able to kill him. And they got him. We got our guy, Osama bin Laden. 8 years after the whole 9/11 aspect. But we got him. Also going on around that very same time, though, was the Arab Spring, where you had a lot of unrest all throughout North Africa and the Middle East. Various different folks locked in civil wars, or people in disagreement with their government, people wanting more religious freedoms or lack thereof, or anything else of the sort. There were all sorts of problems throughout the Middle East where people would oust their leaders. Like in Libya, for example, where Muammar Gaddafi had been caught and basically executed almost on live TV by Libyan civilians. That power vacuum also gave rise to another ugly terrorist organization that was even worse than Al Qaeda, ISIS. ISIS basically killed off Al Qaeda and what used to be Al Qaeda. ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or the Levant, if you will, wanted to reestablish the old Muslim caliphate that existed 1,500 years ago. Okay? And that would overtake the world eventually. That's their plan, and they're going to do so violently. In the last few years, ISIS has really been thwarted, but various different propaganda and violence has taken the world by storm. Okay? The United States needs to reaffirm various different reasons why we're involved in the Middle East in the first place. I think our dependence on foreign oil may have something to do with that, and removing that sort of dependence may improve our relations. I'm just going to pull out altogether. In the meantime, our old adversary, the North Koreans. Technically, North and South Korea are still at war to this day. They just signed an armistice in 1953 that ended armed conflict, but they never officially ended any sort of war. So there remains a threat that North and South Korea could still engage, and of course North Korea is vehemently anti-United States. They're a reclusive state where nobody knows what actually goes on in North Korea, but we do know that there are a lot of different human abuses and human rights abuses and things along those lines. Very few people in that country have access to anything. And if you look at satellite imagery of North Korea, you'll be able to see there's very little activity. They have massive highways, bigger than 635, that have very few cars in it at any one given time. Why is that? Don't always know. Otherwise, though, one thing I will say is that if North Korea attacks any American ally, we'll respond. But otherwise, we want to at least build some sort of dialogue with them. I'll credit Donald Trump for at least talking to the North Koreans, which hadn't been done since before the conflict there in the 50s. And then, of course, now we're in our pandemic era. You can make a case for who's to blame. It was said that somebody ate a bat that had this virus, and eventually it spread. Rumors of it being made and experimented in a lab, and it was loosely controlled and got out, and now it's affecting 3 to 4 million people across the world. I don't know. All I know is that right now in our pandemic era, we have massive unemployment in our country. Unemployment that's going to affect us much the same way the Great Depression affected us. The difference is, even though percentage-wise we're as bad off as the Great Depression, we're in a far better place to be prepared for this. Expect to see various different stimulus packages passed, people talking, Republicans and Democrats coming together to talk. The American people are the backbone of our economy. And when we spend money, the economy circulates. Our government's going to have to go into more debt to get us out of this situation, because if not, we're going to suffer far worse economic consequences. So how we're going to pay for all of these expenditures and stimulus packages, I don't know. But if we don't do something, the consequences will be worse. What I do know is that given our American history, we have suffered through bad times. The Great Depression, 9/11, 1968, the Cuban Missile Crisis, World War II, the American Civil War. Times of severe crisis we have overcome. And if there's any one thing you should take away from this class, and if you've had me for 1301, you will also see it too. This pandemic era is not the first time we have had trauma in our country. Every single time we have overcome the trauma. We will overcome this. It may take a while, and you may have to become more resilient in your efforts to overcome and find this for yourselves and your families. You can overcome this. Our country will overcome this. Our history has proven that time and time again since our colonial era. We will overcome this. We are going to come out on the flip side of this, and we will be prosperous again. And there will be downtimes again as well. We will overcome those too. Know that we are going to get through this. And if you are going to get past this from a mental or physical or physiological or other standpoint, know that this has been done before. We're going to figure this out. America can do it. Believe in this country. Believe in the best in this world. So hopefully, with this 1302 class, and maybe if you've had me for 1301 as well, you will understand America's high imperfections. You will understand where we've gotten so many things wrong. Slavery, discrimination, Native American removal. You will understand where our wrongs are and what we can do to hopefully continue to improve our wrongs and right our wrongs. But hopefully you've gotten a sense to where America has done so many great things. The innovation that happens here, the economic boom that happens here, the opportunity to ascend happens here, to improve your lot in life happens here. People literally die trying to get to this country for a reason. This is a truly exceptional country that's not without its imperfections. But we have a truly unique and exceptional story that makes us different than any other place around the world. We need to work on the things that have been bad and wrong in our country. But we can and we will. But this is a truly exceptional country that can weather the storm. We've done it before. We will do it again. So for that, folks, that is History 1302. I'm glad that you've taken a part of this class or otherwise have watched all these videos. And bless you.